Hi loves, I'm Jenna Belani and this is Live Genuinely. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about the idea of perfection, not only in what we do, but who we are. We'll talk about people-pleasing, worthiness, body image, and self-acceptance. Today, we have the pleasure of speaking with Megan Clarke, entrepreneur and TED Talk speaker. She is a CIO by day, creator of programs for empowering women by night. Please welcome my dear friend, Megan. Hi Megan, thank you so much for being here today. It is always a pleasure to see you. Before we get started, let's, if we could give our audience just a little bit of background information on you. So introduce yourselves to our guests and let them know a little bit about you.
It's nice to be here, Jennifer. Thank you. My name is Megan, and I am a self-proclaimed geek. I first started that. I've been working in technology for many years.
Yes.
But I also have a keen interest in, I've been working a lot with adolescent and teens the past many years in tech, but that has made me aware of the fact of many of the challenges that we face as women, and that they start very young. And so that got me into starting to create programming for women.
Programs such as?
A lot around body image.
Okay.
And confidence, but particularly about our bodies, because I think our bodies in many ways become the most important thing to us for, in some cases, the wrong reasons. And so I wanted to create a program that really helped women learn to embrace their bodies, love their bodies, but also have healthy bodies. So yeah, that's some of what I do in my free time after I'm a geek.
You recently, or very fairly recently, did a TED Talk, and I remember watching that and being like the cheerleader that wasn't physically there, but like I was cheering from you, and every single word that you spoke resonated with me. Tell us a little bit about that TED Talk and how you even got to that point. Like what led you to there?
I'm a perfectionist. I've been one, or I'm always working on it. But even as a child, I had a real tendency towards needing to do everything perfectly, or else I did not feel I was enough. And I was living under this story for many years that I had to have a certain title and a certain job and be a certain kind of human to be lovable. And I achieved the title I wanted at an organization that everyone looked at and went, "Ooh, you work there. Ooh, how neat." And I had the salary that I wanted. And something happened, and I realized I was sort of focusing on all of the wrong things. And I really had to look into the perfectionism that was driving my choices and my behaviors. So that sort of was the seed for the TED Talk. And because I realized that out of perfectionism, a lot of the choices I'd made in the course of my life were ones that weren't necessarily good for my authentic self. And so the TED Talk grew out of that. And it became, I told the story of realizing that it had started with me very young and how it stuck with me. And that learning and recognizing that being enough as who we are was the important piece. And that it's a huge challenge, and also all of the byproducts that happen when you suffer with or deal with perfectionism.
Oh yeah.
So that was sort of the story around it.
I think that many people can relate, myself included. When growing up, it was almost like in order to receive love, I had to perform at a certain level, or I had to be able to meet a certain image. Like I had to have straight A's, I had to be a ballerina, I had to be able to play the piano, I had to, be able to write well, whatever it was. There was always like a benchmark, and it was like unless you hit this, then you are not enough. And it was never like you are enough for me just because you are. And like even as simple as grades, failing a test, and then seeing that letter on the test meant that you're, oh well, yeah, you're pretty smart, but you're not that smart, or like how why did you even come to school today if you're going to get that grade? So the idea of perfectionism, you're right, it definitely starts at a very young age. Where did you notice it most for you? Was it more in the upbringing, or did you feel influenced from society? Where was it, I guess, heaviest for you?
Sort of the influences on creating it.
Yeah.
I'll be, and again, I love my parents.
Yeah.
I'm not mostly, but it really was home. I was raised in a very strict household that valued intellect over anything else, and just the importance of you have to do well, you have to perform well. So it's funny as I've looked back and I thought, where's the particular moment or the event? And there wasn't any. It was just, I think in the way I was raised, it was be the best. And there was sort of an, or else kind of thing. And I think love was really dependent upon performance. So no matter what we did, it was you had better be number one. And there was somehow this sense was ingrained in me. And the one thing I know is that our subconscious minds are formed by the time we're 8. So by the time I was 8, I had this messaging going on that if you don't do the best, it's you're not going to get the love.
Yeah.
And so I really think it started there. And just became worse as I grew older and older. And when I left the house with this whole framework of be whatever people want you to be, because that's how you get love.
And I think one of the biggest challenges, and I'm so glad that you mentioned that you are working with teens and with younger girls, because especially in this day and age where there's the effects of social media are so prevalent. You see people who are constantly measuring their worth, so to speak, by the number of comments or the number of likes. And people are comparing themselves to the highlight reels that they see on social media. And the numbers for young girls or young people in general are astounding at how quickly they are experiencing depression, how quickly they're experiencing any kind of feelings of questioning their self-worth and things like that. And I feel like now we are so quick to judge, and it's kind of scary. So talking a little bit about perfectionism, you have come up in your programs. One of the ones that you have recently created was called Losers for Life. And I love the idea that it talks about, it's not just about the weight. It's not the seeing the number on the scale and thinking that number determines your value, that determines your worth. Tell me a little bit about that.
It's multifaceted because of my own experience with some challenges around body. We become acutely aware as women of our bodies, I think, at a very young age, and the idea that this represents something. And I think as we go out in the world, we feel like it has to look a certain way and it has to be a certain way. And then as we get older, it all becomes about, I'm going to be happy if this looks a certain way. I'm going to be happy if I weigh a certain amount. And because I lived that, I remember I'd lose 5 pounds to get my goal, but then I need to lose 5 more. Or I need to look this way, or my boobs aren't big enough, or this or something. My thighs aren't small enough. And recognizing that I think as women, so much emphasis is placed on our bodies as being the thing that gives us value or makes us worthwhile or makes us appealing to another person. We can have so many amazing things in our life, but if we're not happy with our body, it completely changes our experience in life. And so I started noticing that in adolescents and teens because this stuff starts young, and then realized so many women in my life were really, I was always hearing about, I just want to weigh this much. And I'd say, well, why? Why does that number matter? They couldn't explain it to me because it was some idea in their head. So I started out wanting to do work on just body image alone because that's been a huge thing for me in my entire life. So I started putting something together as far as women really being able to embrace their bodies as they are. Because I taught pole dancing for a while. And that was a really amazing way to help women sort of live in their bodies, because we have to live in our bodies, because we also disconnect from our bodies as we grow up.
Oh, definitely.
As women. So it started there with empowering and all of this. But then I also, in all of the research I was doing, there's also an issue in this country of obesity. And 60+% of women are considered obese. 95% of women who lose any weight will gain it back. Hands down, every research study shows that. And for me, this whole issue with our bodies translates also to a relationship with food that is not healthy. And I think in our efforts to create these bodies that we think need to exist, there's underlying reasons for that we aren't addressing. And then food becomes a mechanism of trying to deal with those underlying issues. So we're trying to lose weight, but we're not eating healthy. And there's a whole thing that's going on. And I don't think anybody is really looking at that holistically of how do we eat healthy, how do we exercise well, and how do we deal with all that internal churn that I think we constantly have in our brains about I have to look this way, I have to be this way. And there's not focus on what matters most.
I think it's really interesting that you say that we're not focused on what matters most. And it's, well, why do we have to look a certain way? And there was I remember watching like a Facebook video, and it was like a couple, and they were saying, you know, we're going to go out with so-and-so. Oh, who's going to be there? Oh, it's just the guys. And then the wife like throws her hair up in a messy bun and like throws on a pair of jeans instead of a pair of sweats. And she just goes out. And then the next time they go out, oh, so-and-so is coming. And so a lot of times people think that women are getting dressed for men, but then they show another video and, oh, we're going out with so-and-so and their wives. And all of a sudden they're putting on their designer shoes. They're like doing their lashes. And like, it's because what was interesting about that video is it was almost like we were pitting women against each other as if we were competing for resources.
Yes.
When we're not,
Right.
you know, and maybe the idea that men think that we're dressing up to impress them, but it's also not. It's so that we feel good about ourselves. Like if we're taking care of ourselves, that's for us, not necessarily for you. But at the same time, are women thinking that? Are women taking care of themselves for themselves? You know, because there's so many women who are like, okay, my value comes from whether I'm liked or loved, and that's a big one because, and we talked a little bit about that earlier about being liked, being loved, and being able to have that idea of perfectionism, performing it a certain way. And so it translates from grades to now our image, and that is now our value in the world.
The interesting thing there is that I think any woman could put on an outfit she loves, and you feel like, I'm rocking it,
Yeah.
and go out and feel great. But then the next morning, look in the mirror and say, oh, you know, my belly's too big, this and that and the other thing. And to me, that's why I want to do this work, is because those moments of I'm rocking this are transitory. It was like, you know, I spent a few years being on red carpets, having my hair done and my makeup, and I would feel amazing. But it was because somebody did my makeup and my hair, and I had this amazing dress on. But without the dress, the hair, and the makeup, I thought I was a worthless piece of whatever. And so I really, my goal is that regardless of what you're wearing, whether it's the sweats or the jeans or the shoes, you feel good as who you are.
Right.
And I do believe in health. So, you know, to me, it's like having a healthy body is important. But the idea that you can love the heels and feel great, you can be in your slippers and feel great. The problem is, I believe that most women have this unrealistic view that this thing is the source of their happiness, and it's not. Just like you said earlier, it's not about title, money, any of that. This isn't going to work either. If you don't love who you are on the inside, you won't have a lasting relationship with your body that's positive and healthy. Right.
And if that is the problem, right? If the idea of this outward appearance is what determines our value, what would you say to someone who feels that way? How would you help them to get past that?
Yeah, and therein lies why I created Losers for Life. What I would say to them, that has to change. It absolutely has to change, because that's a recipe for never being happy. You will always find the next thing you think you need to do to be happy once you reach the goal you've set. And that happens with our bodies. I'll tell just a story, if that's okay, as an example. I have struggled with body stuff my whole life. 8 years ago or so, got the best trainer. For 3 months, I did everything he said. I followed the most intense eating program you could imagine. No sugar for 3 months. And you know me, Jen, and I love sugar. I shredded. I had the body that I said I wanted, muscles, shred, and I would, look at me. Like, I would even look at myself naked and be like, oh, wow, I've never seen that before. Finished after the 3 months, looked great. 4 days later, I had a cake in front of me, and I was eating the frosting off the cake. So I had this thing that I said was going to completely make me happy. So why 4 days later was I engaging in this behavior? And that is exactly what happens, because it wasn't about the body. That was not actually going to make me happy. And that's the thing that women need to really understand. It doesn't matter how you look. Again, be healthy, do all the good stuff. But the next day, you're going to find your thighs are going to be too big, or your arms are going to look like sausages. And so what I tell them is they have to do the work to undo the belief that's driving that whole motive. And one thing you'll always hear me say is beliefs, they drive thoughts, thoughts drive feelings, feelings drive behaviors, behaviors drive actions. If you have a fundamental belief that you have to be perfect to be loved, or whatever it is that translates to I have to look a certain way to be loved, you have to go backwards and undo that belief so that you can love this as it is.
Right.
And that's what I would tell them. And the other thing I would always tell women is we often approach trying to get our bodies to look like we want from a place of hate. I hate how it is right now. I want to lose 20 pounds. You will never get to a point of loving your body if you approach it from a place of hate. Any change that you make, it's not like you wake up one day and you love it. That's what happened to me. 3 months later, woo, but still driving me was this perfection, the same thing. And so the behaviors that would make me incapable of keeping this showed up because I fundamentally believed I wasn't good enough. I wasn't whatever. It drives it. So that's a long answer to your question, I know, but there are so many layers to it.
Well, it's one of the things that people say is, well, it's my belief. I can't really change what I believe. But people change their minds all the time. You know, even if you ask somebody what they want for dinner, do you want this or this? Well, no, it doesn't matter. But okay, well then let's go for this. Oh no, I don't want that.
Yeah.
You know, like even just deciding what you want for dinner, you can change your mind. So if you can change your mind, you can change your thoughts. And one of the quotes that I absolutely love is Louise Hay. She says that a belief is just a thought that is thought over and over again. And so if we change the way, as to your point, if we just change the way that we think about ourselves and come from a place of love instead of a place of hate. One of the things that we learned from, or one of the things that I learned from one of the people that I was coaching with, she spoke about don't be pushing off something that you don't want. Be pulled towards what you do want.
Yeah.
Because if you're pushing off something that you don't want, you're still in that space, you know?
Yeah.
But if you let go of that and instead be pulled towards what's driving you, now you're no longer connected to that place that you don't want to be. You're instead connected to the place where you do. You're whatever it is that you're trying to change. I think that is a much more permanent way to go about manifesting your beliefs around your body, how you feel about yourself. I know women, not only, I guess we do it to ourselves. And I think society definitely plays a part in it, but we almost shame ourselves if you're too fat or you're too thin. And that's how that even got to be like a term. Like you're not fat. You have fat on your body. You're not that, you know? And so we can shame ourselves into thinking like, I don't look good in this, or I don't feel right in this. And it's because we're judging ourselves based off of other people's standards instead of saying like, oh, but I really like this dress and I feel wonderful in this dress. And if it makes you happy, then wear that, you know? One of my favorite things is when it talks about how to have a beach body. Have a body, go to the beach, you know? And that's how you have a beach body. Like, we shouldn't have to feel like our body is meant to impress or meet the standards of someone else. It's just, that's who we are. And if we feel safe enough to show up as we are, I think that's more important, you know?
No, I agree. The challenge is, and I can only speak because my experience is growing up in this country, is we aren't raised in any way that I think supports that.
Right.
For the majority of women, especially with social media. I've always said I would not have survived if social media were around when I was a teen and dealing with I dealt with a couple of eating disorders. I would not, because we were born and we're raised, and especially right now, all we see are these examples of, people who, Instagram is full of the bikini shots. You don't see anyone holding a computer or a laptop or reading, esoteric philosophy. And I think that's part of the challenge, because that's the idea, what you just said. But unfortunately, there isn't enough attention being paid to the external factors that are influencing the belief system that young girls are getting, that translate to those thoughts, that as we grow, it becomes a matter of like undoing that subconscious belief set that we have by the time we are 8. I almost feel like we developed this by the time we were 8, and then we spend the rest of our lives trying to undo it.
Yeah.
So I absolutely agree with you. The goal is, no matter how you look, you're comfortable. Again, I do think health is important.
Absolutely.
And what you just said about fat, this one thing I want to note is that I also don't like to even say let's lose weight. It's like, let's lose fat.
Yeah.
Because when you're losing weight, you're losing 75% fat, 25% muscle most of the time. If you're losing fat, you're really focusing on the things that cause disease. So I am so with you on everything that you're saying. And that's, again, why I so believe in what I'm trying to do, which is let's change the conversation.
Yeah.
Stop selling your beach body. Start selling what you need to truly be happy, because then the beach body comes.
Exactly.
Irregardless of how you look.
I love that. I love that. So we're going to take a really quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk with Megan a little bit more about empowering women and healing that self-image. So stick around. We will be right back. Welcome back. We are here with Megan Clarke and talking a little bit about the idea of perfectionism. One of the things that I know that you cover in Losers for Life is dealing with the idea of being enough, and taking the stress off of feeling like what my body looks like determines my worth. Let's talk a little bit about the idea of being enough. Where would one turn in order to know that? Because, and we were talking about during the break, your body does know. Intrinsically, in your gut, you know that you're enough. But it's our mind that kind of talks us out of that, right?
Right. Yeah, I fundamentally believe, and with all of the work that I've done, is that when we are born connected, whatever you want to call it, some people call it God, some call it universe, some call it truth, but in that there is this knowing sense that we are enough. We are whole beings. The problem is, as we're raised and societal thoughts and ideas come in, we start separating from that, because we start hearing that you have to get this grade, or you have to do this, or you have to be this good in sports to be loved or accepted or whatever it is. So we really separate from that knowingness. But I believe fundamentally we know we're enough. We just are completely separate from it. So the idea of knowing we're enough is about getting back in touch with that core, and I call it gut or intuition, knowing, whatever works for anyone. It works because it's the same thing. And part of that is you have to clear away the chatter. You have to clear away all of the things that are going on that are telling you you're not enough. You're a POS, you're this. Everything that happens that we then translate in our brains as, see, that's just another example that I'm not good enough. And so there's a lot of things that you have to do to clear it away. You have to feeling feelings and working on your thoughts and beliefs. And the other piece is quieting the chatter, which also has to do with meditating or doing things that are really good for you, because there's many steps to being able to hear that.
Yeah.
But once you do, no matter what happens on the outside, you're aligned with this sense of, I'm enough, and that's what matters most.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that one of the biggest reasons people disconnect, like you were saying, having that connection of that knowing that you are intrinsically completely born whole, you are enough exactly as you are, is dealing with rejection. Part of the reason why I think that people feel that disconnect is they get rejected. They have to deal with some sort of rejection. And if it messes with our energy and our belief system of how we measure up, So dealing with rejection, if it is from a friendship, from a relationship, even from a relationship with a parent, a relationship with a teacher, like, and I'm not saying like romantically, and maybe it is romantically if they had a significant other where they felt rejection. But if they ever feel like that feeling of rejection, and then they internalize that and say, oh, that's because I'm not enough. It's because I don't look a certain way, or I haven't performed at a certain level. That can kind of put us on tilt, right?
Right. Well, it's interesting about that because life is about rejection. I mean, part of growing up is not everybody's going to make the team. Not everybody's going to do this or get the A or get into get into the college they want to get into. It's about having the knowing on the inside that rejection isn't necessarily personal, and for the most part it's not. It's not personal, but what we do is we make it all about us. We make it about I was rejected because I am not enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not pretty enough, I have the wrong body, I didn't study the right thing, I didn't do the right thing. And that's part of all of the wiring that happens from when we are very young. The way to offset that is to have the wherewithal and the capacity to receive a rejection and recognize it for what it is. At that moment, in that time, I wasn't the choice. And it doesn't have anything to do with my value. It has nothing to do with the value that I bring to the table. I mean, I can tell you, I work in a field where only 15% of executives are women. And there's a reason for that. And so I'm sometimes rejected for things. And it used to be all about, well, it must be because I'm not smart enough, I haven't done enough. And what I realize, it very rarely has anything to do with me. And that's the goal when it comes to rejection, because then you separate from the personal, the emotional, and the self-talk that says, you rejected me because I'm horrible. No, it's that, okay, there was a rejection here. It's not a reflection of me. It hurts and it's sad, or I'm angry. I mean, you have to feel the feelings. But not then internalize it and say, it's a reflection of my value.
Right.
That's the challenge. That's where the work is.
Yeah. When you said feeling the feelings, explain that a little bit more. Like, because a lot of times we actually even will judge how we feel. Like, oh, I feel sad right now. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I feel sad about that. Like, or if someone says like, oh, I'm never going to let them see me cry. Well, if you feel sad, you're allowed to cry. Or, you know what I mean? As if feeling feelings can be a bad thing, and we end up pushing those into our body. Our mind may forget. We may be able to clear our mind of feeling that emotion, but that emotion still exists. It's in us now, right? So when you say feeling the feelings and allowing it to come out, tell me, let's talk about that a little bit. What does that mean to you?
That is so important. It's also a part of what I've built into what I do, because I can speak more to women, because that's how I identify. But as women, as we are raised, to a large degree, we are taught not to feel what we're feeling, to shove it down, don't show it, it's weakness. I remember once someone telling me, you can never cry at the office because it makes the men uncomfortable. You can't do it. Wow. Early in my career, because I'm a crier. I've always worn my heart on my sleeve.
Same.
But I was told, from a very young age, like, well, I'll give you a reason to cry, not violently, but but it's so interesting that as women, we are raised to believe it's a bad thing. We're labeled emotional, we're labeled sensitive, and just what's wrong with those? But societally, I believe there has been this overbearing pressure to shove emotion, and also we aren't given the tools to really handle it when it comes up, because we're told it's bad. So, and I can relate it to what I've discussed before. One of the reasons we use food is because we are feeling emotions and they're uncomfortable, and we don't know how, and we shove them down because that's what we've been taught to do. But there's a discomfort there still. So we eat because we feel better.
It's a coping mechanism.
It's a coping mechanism. So for me, part of what the healing that every woman out there, and even men, because men have a whole other set of challenges they deal with, is when you feel it, feel it. Let yourself cry. Let yourself be angry. I mean, in healthy ways. If you're angry, you can write an FU letter to the person you're angry about. But feel what you're feeling, because if you don't, it will get shoved down, and it is going to come up at the bad moments.
Yeah.
For me, I describe it as, if you've ever seen the movie Alien or Aliens, I call it my alien.
Yeah.
If I push feelings down, then it just goes, you know, unexpectedly, and
Right.
usually in a meeting at work.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's why it's so important
Right.
to feel.
Right.
We have to feel.
So when we talked about dealing with rejection, what would be your advice for somebody who's trying to move through that feeling of rejection?
It'd be, first, let yourself grieve, cry, feel all the things you need to feel. Talk about it if you need to, write about it if you need to, but allow yourself to have, and I mean the actual feelings, because sometimes in lieu of the actual feeling, we'll do something else. Like oftentimes anger is really a mask for sadness.
Oh, absolutely.
So let yourself feel it and let yourself talk about it and accept that it's okay to feel it, because that's the other, because then you said it earlier, we feel guilty.
Yeah, you
First
judge
of all,
the feelings.
we judge it as like it's a bad thing. So absolutely to feel it. That's number one. And then it's got to be that self-talk about it's not personal, because then you move through the feeling, and if you let the feeling move through you and out, the energy and all the negative energy that potentially comes with it is gone, but you've also allowed it to move out of your body. So there's room for the good things then,
Yeah.
that the learning that's meant to come, or next time I'm going to do this,
Yeah.
and to focus on what you need to focus on.
Right. And then to be able to recognize the self-talk that happens while you're feeling those feelings.
Yeah.
And being present and aware of your mental state, of thinking, of the thoughts that you're thinking of. If the thought comes up like, oh, well, I was rejected because I'm not pretty enough. Okay, let's think about it. Is that really true? You know, or I was rejected because I'm not smart enough. Is that really true? Why do I think that? Is that my belief, or is it a belief that somebody told me? You know what I mean? Because sometimes we adopt thoughts that aren't even really ours,
Right.
and we will continue to think them even though they might not necessarily be true to us. Like, say for example, if somebody were to think that, you know, well, I don't know, successful people never sleep. Do you really believe that? Or is it a belief that you adopted? You know what I mean? That that you had heard somewhere. And so now you feel guilty if you ever take a break. You know, that's not necessarily true. So I think that when someone is dealing with rejection or dealing with any kind of emotion and being able to move through those emotions, as you said, it's definitely being also aware of how they're thinking. Another thing that is important, I feel, when dealing with emotions is knowing what brings you joy. One of the things that I always see on social media that you love to do is having dance breaks. So much fun. I love it whenever you post about those. Where did the idea of doing dance breaks come from? Or where did the concept of doing dance breaks come from?
Well, it's my dance breaks in public on social media actually started with the pandemic.
Okay.
But I have always believed, well, I mean, dance is one of the best things anyone can do. Dance is so celebratory, and especially, you know, because you know when you hear a piece of music, because you were a dancer too, or are.
Yes.
It never leaves us.
Yeah.
You feel a piece of music. I think music speaks to our soul.
Yes.
You feel it and you're like,
It's a different language. Yeah.
Yes, it's a completely different language. And I believe very much that in the healing that we do from limiting belief systems and all of that, movement has to be involved, because
Yes.
beliefs live in our bodies and negative feelings live in our bodies. We have to move our bodies to heal. And I think dancing is one of the best things to do. And my goal with what I was doing during the pandemic was just get up for 2 minutes and move. Because even if you're having a bad day, but you dance to something you love for 2 minutes, you can't help but feel better.
Yeah.
And it gets the energy moving. The negative energy can move out, better things can move in. And I think it's part of the healing package that we do when we're trying to resolve.
Yeah. To your point, you said that like moving helps us to heal, right? It's like after you have a surgery, that they want you to, like when I had surgery after my kids were born, the first thing they want you to do is get up, start moving, because they want your body to come back to yourself. They want it to remember how to function. Or if you're feeling sad, they always tell you go for a walk. And the whole point of that is your body is moving. So if you have the desire to dance, the desire to move. It, like you said, it helps to move emotions and feelings and energy through your body in a way that helps it to release, where it doesn't feel stagnant anymore. It helps us to reconnect with ourselves. It helps us to come back to our joy. And doing things that bring us joy is so important. And that's one of the facets that you talk about in Losers for Life. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Let's talk a little bit about the importance of, it sounds simple enough, like do what makes you happy, do things that bring you joy, but there's a reason for it.
Yes, there is. And because I believe when we do things that truly bring us joy, we're doing things that speak to our most authentic selves, basically. Because a lot of people tell us what should make us happy.
Yeah.
And I have, friends all over that all sorts of, one woman said, well, being a mother was supposed to be the happiest thing for me. And she was struggling with postpartum. And it's like, okay, so what in this moment would truly speak to your soul? And that's what doing things that are joyful is really all about, because we are put on this planet to experience joy. But I think the lives that we live really suck that out of us. And to truly be fully realized humans, people, whatever the goal is to be, and to live life to the fullest and be the happiest, you have to do joyful things. And when the most authentic part of you is feeling that joy and being expressed, like that's a feeling no one can explain. And that's why the dancing for me, my whole body feels the joy. And everyone has that, but it takes a while for some folks to figure it out. It did for me.
Yeah.
For some years, people would say, well, what brings you joy? And I would just like, I don't know, work.
Well,
but that was someone else's story, was work.
And I think that the reason why sometimes it can be difficult to figure out what brings you joy is because somehow we've got the idea that we have to earn joy. Like being joyful is like, oh, you don't get it unless you deserve it. No, we're meant to live that way. You're meant to live joyfully. You're meant to live at peace. That is our state that we're supposed to live in, not stressed and overworked or mentally burdened. So when it's like, oh, I won't be happy until, or I'll be joyful when, I can relax when, as if you can't be that the entire way. So sometimes people don't know what brings them joy because they haven't felt allowed to be, or they feel that they have to earn that, when joy is our birthright.
With you it is, but I'm one of those people who for years struggled. And again, I think that goes back to the belief systems that are formed so young, that you have to earn, you have to be enough, you have to have accomplished enough, and then. And that's the great issue with, I think, how most of us live now. I'm working to that point, that undetermined point, and then I'll be happy, or then everything, I'll feel good. But then even when we get there,
there's another.
Then it's the next.
Yeah.
Because the joy has to come from here.
Yeah.
And we have to connect to that. So, yeah, I totally agree with you on that.
Beautiful. I love that. Tell us a little bit about Losers for Life. I am so excited about this program.
It's fun. How do I say it in a nutshell? Okay. Well, I've already talked about how it started.
Yeah.
My goal, 95% of women who lose weight can't keep it off. And I think there's a fundamental challenge for most women, and that we put everything in our body. Like, my joy is going to happen when I am a certain weight, when I am a certain size, blah, blah, blah.
When I can fit in these jeans.
Yes.
Yeah.
But all of that is transitory and temporary. So Losers for Life is about becoming your healthiest self, your most authentic self, and dealing with all of the food and other issues that surround your body. So I'll just describe it in it's a 4-month program. And what I do is I take women through a process of looking at all of the layers that cause the challenges with food, why we can't treat our bodies in a healthy way, and to long-term have a place of sustainability where they feel good about themselves and their bodies, they're healthy, and they find their joy. So it's in the 4 months. The first month is we take a look at feelings and emotions, and we learn how to feel them. And all the while, too, exercise and food, because you can't get healthy if you aren't eating correctly and exercising in the way. You have to eat and all that. But first we look at all of the emotions that have been pushed down, that are the reasons, like for me, the reasons I used to grab the pounder bag of, M&Ms. Then we go into the thoughts and the beliefs that underlie it all. Because again, our belief system's formed by the time we are 8. Mm-hmm. All of our thoughts come from that belief system. And you said it earlier, it's someone else's beliefs for the most part. Whoever our caretakers were, we take on their beliefs and the beliefs of all the generations before them. We think 80,000 thoughts a day. So if you have a negative belief, you're going to think negative thoughts, and then you're going to have negative feelings, and then we don't feel our feelings. So we hit the feelings first, thoughts and beliefs next. Then there's a whole embodiment section, because especially for women, the biggest thing as we grow up, I think we separate from our bodies. We lose complete touch. Yes. So with the embodiment, you have to get back in touch with your body. Because again, we diet from a place of hate. We need to be, and I don't even like the word diet, but it's one that's used. We have to try to transform our bodies from a place of love. So through the embodiment, let's get that connection back. And then the last month is about, and you said the same thing earlier, about what I call a vision of the future. Be pulled by your vision of the future. It's about whoever you think you want to be. How does she think? What does she look? What does she do? What does she believe? Live it today. Yeah. Because again, you can only make decisions from that if you embody and are that person. So it's a 4-month process. And for most of the woman, there's weight loss as part of it, or I call it fat loss, because they are changing everything about them that enables them to eat in a better way, want to exercise, do the things for them that are good, so that long term they make better choices. Right. Because all the stuff underneath that's causing the weight gain in the first place, that's been removed.
Yeah. The focus of this program, it sounds like, is not even on, it's not the focus of that number on the scale. The focus is on healing and focusing on the wellness, not on the illness, but on the wellness of the entire person. Yeah. A healthy mind, a healthy body, healthy emotional state. That's brilliant. I think that's fantastic.
To be in the program, you have to sign a contract that you won't weigh yourself.
I love that.
For that very reason. Yeah. Yeah. Because I was one of those people, I weighed myself every day and like a pound either way, and I would freak out like, we can't. Those numbers are meaningless. They really are.
You also mentioned that you had personal experience dealing with eating disorders. Tell us how or if that had any influence on the creation of this program.
No, that's a great question. Yes, I dealt with 2 eating disorders in my adolescent teen years through college. And it started with anorexia, which, as many people know, anorexia is really a disease about control. So the healing of that has to be very psychologically based, and I did that. But unfortunately, as I healed that, I then moved into bulimia territory. So I dealt with bulimia for several years and had to get work, and thankfully, thank everything, was able to move through that and heal that. The challenge was, while I healed the bulimic behavior, I didn't heal the relationship I had with food. And as far as influencing losers, one of the fundamental reasons that Losers for Life exists is I know what it's like to absolutely hate your body. I know what it's like to look in the mirror and say every horrible thing you can at yourself. I know so much what that's like, and I've always said, if I can help one woman have one less day of feeling that, I will have served my purpose. But the way it relates to losers in some ways, like I said, I healed the bulimia, but I didn't heal the relationship with food. And so I continued in many years with a bad relationship with my food. If I had a bad day, I would eat. If I had a breakup, I'd eat sugar. I'd drive home from work and I was stressed. I had chicken and vegetables in the fridge, but I'd stop off at the store and get frosting. I'm a frosting fanatic. And I really saw in my own behavior that a great deal of my unhappiness in life was because I was using food in a negative way. It was impacting my body in a negative way. I hated my body. And that's a horrible place to live. And so in my own process of dealing with the food later after the bulimia and all of that, it's what I think has given me the foundation of why this work is important, because so many women we place everything on this, and then we don't feel our feelings, and so we eat. And so we're in this vicious cycle of engaging in unhealthy behaviors that are producing unhealthy results that we then hate, so we eat again. And that goes back to, we talked about earlier about the weighing thing. Is weighing and being on a scale is part of, I think, that very dysfunctional cycle that happens. And so that's, what I went through is an influencer in many ways, but more so because I don't want women to feel that kind of pain. There is so much pain around our bodies, and I want to be part of the change in that conversation. And in that for women.
I think that one of the most powerful things that you said earlier is when you talked about, you know, in your body that you are enough, you know that you're worthy, and our mind almost disconnects from that. And coming back to ourselves. I love that your program focuses on loving yourself first, loving you exactly as you are, because you are meant to live in joy. You are meant to live in love, and being able to bring yourself back to that state of and bringing that connection back to knowing that you're enough, knowing that you are worthy. It's a beautiful place to be, and being able to use that to be able to then, I'm not saying that you need to accept yourself exactly as you are. Well, yes, I am saying accept yourself exactly as you are, because no matter where you are in life, you're exactly supposed to be there, right? No matter where you are in life, this is where you're supposed to be right now. And where you choose to go from there is where you're supposed to go, right? We all get to make our own choices. We all get to make our own decisions, and how we choose to move forward is up to us, right? I think that when knowing the choices that we make, and basing them in love, as opposed to hating ourselves, so powerful. And I think that it's the program that you've created is absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. I think it's going to help a ton of people. So thank you for creating that. And thank you for being so honest. It takes a lot of courage to be vulnerable. So I think that I appreciate you so much for doing that.
No, I'm so grateful to be here. Can I just say one more thing based on what you just said?
Please.
Because you talked about the being enough. And that's where it's so important to me that people understand that I am all about getting in touch with the part of you that knows that you are enough. Because for any woman who wants to, transform their body, look a certain way, they will never be able to do that long term if they are not completely in touch with being enough. Because if you do not believe you are enough, you will never make decisions long term that prove to you that you are enough. And that's, to me, that's the key. That's why the work is not in the gym. It's not in the grocery store. It's all that inner work. Like you said, self-love. Because if you love yourself, if I love myself, I would not be eating an entire bag of Oreo cream if I truly love myself.
Right.
Because I feel horrible after it. So because when you said enough, I'm like, that's what this is all about. So, sorry, I just had to say a little more.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So thank you so much for coming out. And actually, I want to give this to you on behalf of Soul Loved. This bracelet is actually worthy, and it says, I am deserving, I am worthy, I am more than enough. And so that is the mantra behind this bracelet. This bracelet is, it has carnelian, it has riverstone, it has a sunstone in it, and it's all about capturing our worthiness, capturing our essence of knowing that we are enough, connecting with that space. So I think this bracelet would be perfectly made for you, and I want to give this to you as a gift.
Oh my God, Jennifer, thank you. I mean, I don't know if you can see it. It's just like, this is my dream. And I know we share that for women. That they all know that they are more than enough.
More than enough.
If every one of us felt this world would be a completely different place.
Completely.
Thank you
so much for being here today. Thank you so much for joining us. We will see you next week, and hope to see you soon. Take care, everyone. Have a wonderful day.